Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining the Clean Heat for All Package Terminal Heat Pump Program. We're just waiting another 1 to 2 minutes to give some folks time to join, and we'll be kicking off very shortly. Thank you. All right, it's starting to look like we're hitting critical mass, so we're going to go ahead and get started. So good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Clean Heat for All Package Terminal Heat Pump Program Informational Webinar, or PON 5907. My name is Cody Gliby-Weiss. I'm a project manager at NYSERDA. I'm joined today by some of my NYSERDA colleagues, particularly Michael Reed, Sophie Cardona, Brett Weiland, and Thomas Ye, who are all helping kick off this new initiative that NYSERDA is driving, focused on bringing new, cost-effective, high-performance package terminal heat pumps to multifamily buildings in New York State. So we're going to go to the next slide, please. Thank you. To briefly cover some quick admin points up front, we will be recording this webinar. All attendees are going to be muted by default. If you do have questions, you will notice that the chat functionality in the bottom right of WebEx is turned off, but the Q&A box is open. So please make sure to submit any questions as we go through the course of this presentation through the Q&A function. We will be answering all questions at the end. So we aren't ignoring you, we're adding them to a list, and we'll cover them at the end. Finally, we will be making a copy of the recording as well as written responses to all questions that have been submitted to the Q&A available after the webinar has been completed. So next slide, please. Briefly, just to cover the agenda, we got a lot on the plate today, so we won't spend too long talking about this, but really we'll be going through a brief overview of the new program, a little bit of a background and why we kind of came to the point we did on where we wanted to provide funding in the market. We'll be talking about some of the specifications that we're looking for out of these package terminal heat pump products, the funding we're making available to the market. We'll talk a little bit about what the process will be for both submitting proposals as well as the post-proposal submittal stage. And then, of course, we'll be getting into some Q&A. So next slide, please. So to start, so welcome to the Clean Heat for All Package Terminal Heat Pump Program. So this is a new investment that NYSERDA is making. Right now, we have $10 million available to this program to support the development and demonstration of high-efficiency, cold climate-rated package terminal heat pumps in New York. There's a couple of things that we're really interested in making sure that these units really have, and that's kind of what we're calling out here. What we're really interested in helping support development of are units that are compatible with existing building infrastructure. So that means, of course, they can fit in standard PTAC sleeves that are found in many buildings within New York State. They do not require building electrical infrastructure upgrades. They have good cold climate performance, which is partially in service of not requiring building electrification upgrades. They have scalable and flexible condensate management solutions, and then, where applicable, improve indoor air quality by providing energy recovery functionality. These types of units, we see a lot of units that have a couple of these features, but we're really looking to help support the development of one packaged unit that can bring all of these together and kind of deliver the full solutions that customers are looking for in New York. So next slide, please. So to give a little bit of a background on this program, this Clean Heat for All packaged terminal heat pump program is really arising out of the success that we saw under the original Clean Heat for All Challenge, which was a partnership between New York City Housing Authority, New York Power Authority, and NYSERDA to really design and test out through window PTHPs for customers or for residents of NYCHA buildings. Over the course of this pilot, which was admittedly a little bit of a small sample size, but over the course of this pilot, apartments that were retrofitted to through window packaged terminal heat pumps saw up to 75% reduction by square footage in heating energy required. This was in comparison to a steam boiler baseline system, but overall, the success of these trial pilot units has really led NYSERDA to take a closer look at what is the potential feasibility of expanding the types of units that are being funded, and how can this work as a cost-effective solution for decarbonizing buildings in New York rather than expensive central plant retrofits. So we really want to take the key lessons that we've learned from Clean Heat for All, because I don't want to make it sound like it was all successes. There were certainly a few things that we've learned that we want to work on for the next version, and that's really why we have this program here today. We've identified what the most important features are in these units. We've identified where there are a lot of barriers, and now we're looking to expand the development of units that can not just fit in windows, but also in PTACs, existing PTAC sleeves. So next slide, please. So this program is going to be phased in a couple of different sections. As of right now, what has just gone out almost exactly 2 weeks ago is the first phase of this program, or PON 5907 itself. This part of the program is really focused around product development and supporting manufacturers as they scope out and develop a unit that meets NYSERDA specifications for cold climate packaged terminal heat pumps. We have $10 million in funding available to support product development, as well as field demonstrations for products that are developed through awarded manufacturers. And that is under the scope of the PON that has been issued today, or the PON that has been issued about 2 weeks ago. The next step of the process, which will be done through RFQL 5937. This is going to come out in Q1, Q2 2025. This is where we'll be looking to engage with building owners on qualifying demonstration sites where the developed units under stage 1 may actually be trialed and tested to prove out their performance. Finally, the third stage of this program, which is a little bit further out, more of a 2027 timeline, once we have products that have been developed, that have been rigorously tested through real-world conditions and have good documented performance, units that have been successful, we are planning to expand and create early adopter incentives so that more owners can take advantage of these units rather than just the folks that got funded through the demonstration project. So for right now, the important thing to keep in mind is that we are in stage 1 of a 3-step process, and as the coming years roll on, we'll be adding more funding and more support for these types of products. Next slide, please. So to talk a little bit about what are the units we're actually interested in seeing proposals for. There are 3 categories or 3 types of units that we are really interested in manufacturers proposing new units to us. These fit into 1, standard size PTACs. These are PTACs that typically have electric resistance heating and are for about 42 inches long. These are fairly common across the country. These are going to be one of the most familiar PTACs that everyone has seen, which is where we go into category 2, where we're looking at a little bit more of a New York City specialty, or PTACs that have been designed to accommodate a hydronic heating cabinet or coil over the top of it. This is something that is found a lot in New York City and not so much outside of other places, primarily due to the prevalence of steam and hot water heat in New York City multifamily buildings. So we are very much interested in looking for products that are also compatible with existing hydronic coils, particularly for use on the coldest days of the year. The third category we're looking for is products that can fit into a through-wall AC sleeve. These are typically a bit shorter than a full PTAC, or about 24 inches, and they typically do not have heating. So we are looking for proposals from manufacturers for products that can fit in any one of these three categories. Manufacturers are encouraged to propose to, of course, at least one, but you are welcome to propose to as many or as few as you believe you have the capabilities to actually deliver a unit for. There will be no benefit to applying to more in terms of scoring, but there'll be no negative in applying to one in terms of scoring. So basically, if you think you can do it, we'd love to see those proposals. Next slide, please. So just to clarify, who are we looking to submit proposals now under the scope of this PON? We are looking for submissions from heat pump manufacturers, startups, or other entities that are capable of developing, building, and demonstrating the production of package terminal heat pumps, particularly in New York. So this PON is really focused on manufacturers and product development, building owners and operators, heat pump service providers, engineering design firms. You all don't have to apply to this PON, but you should stay closely linked to us because RFQL 5937, which will be coming out in Q1 of next year, this is where we're going to be looking for your applications for the buildings that you want to demonstrate with units that are developed through the PON that we're talking about today. So stay tuned for more information, but for right now, for this PON, we are looking for proposals from heat pump manufacturers. Next slide, please. So to talk a little bit about the funding, we are making available per product category or per product that is submitted to the PON, up to $1.25 million. This is for both product development costs as well as anticipated field demonstration costs. On the product development side, manufacturers should be asking us for up to $250,000 per product. So if you're only submitting a product in category 1, you can ask for up to $250K for one product. If you're submitting 3 products, 1 in each category, you can ask up to $750K, $250K for each product. And this is per awarded manufacturer. So there's no limit to how many products you could propose as a manufacturer. We would just ask that you put your best products forward. In terms of eligibility, what types of products can be actually submit to this program for development? We are taking proposals for both brand new products that haven't been developed or don't exist in your catalogs yet, that would be created new for this program, and we will also accept existing equipment that may already meet the NYSERDA spec. However, one key thing to note is that if it's an existing unit that already meets NYSERDA spec, you are not eligible for the $250K for product development support. Only if you are modifying or if you're modifying an existing unit or creating a new unit, can you get this $250K for product development. Moving on to the field demonstration support side, this is where we are also making per product $1 million available per awarded manufacturer. So for products that have been awarded and developed under the scope of the PON, there will be up to $1 million per that category to actually demonstrate this. So there are no strict requirements on what this actually needs to look like at this stage. We are looking for an estimate in terms of at what cost do you believe that you can deliver these units on a per apartment basis. And that's kind of how we're looking for manufacturers to request field demonstration support from us here. We will pay up to 100% of field demonstration eligible costs. So this is a range of costs that are related to the package terminal heat pump projects. This can be anything from owner-required make-ready work if you need to improve the insulation or install new wall sleeves. This can be installation support. This can be training for either operators or tenants. This can be ongoing O&M costs. There's a range of costs that are listed in the PON that are eligible. We would strongly encourage manufacturers that are responding and requesting funding per products for field demonstration to look at the eligible costs and take an estimate of at what price point you believe you can deliver these services. So next slide, please. To talk a little bit more about what we're doing kind of pre-proposals being due, we are going to be hosting 2 program launch workshops where we'll be looking to bring together both manufacturers as well as major owner partners and design engineering firms to really talk about the NYSERDA spec, talk about the key requirements of buildings and what owners are really looking for, what are the most important features of the spec that need to be in a unit to make this a cost-effective option for decarbonization in the building, and give manufacturers and owners a chance to kind of make these initial connections to start talking about demonstration sites or potential demonstration sites. So these program launch workshops are scheduled for January 7th and February 4th in the morning. We will be posting a link to registration shortly within the next week or two. So keep an eye out for that coming out. And we would love to see you there, especially if you're a manufacturer, an owner, or an engineer. The second step we are looking to do is help coordinate site visits between manufacturers and owners. We think that this is a really important first step as manufacturers refine their proposals under the scope of this PON to give manufacturers an opportunity to really see what do some of these buildings in New York City look like? What do we need to deal with? What specific design constraints? What is this owner or what is this building really focused on delivering for their tenants and their kind of energy saving goals? So NYSERDA will also be helping coordinate introductions, as noted, between owners and manufacturers to help schedule some of these site visits to give folks an opportunity to see these buildings. If you are interested in attending these workshops or interested in participating in site visits, please reach out to us at the program email, pthpprogram@nyserda.newyork.gov, and we can put you on the list. So next slide, please. And I will also be passing this off. Oh, I'm sorry. So next slide, please, to really quickly talk about the proposal process. This is just to give you an idea of the timeline and when we expect some major milestones to occur. So right off the bat, as noted, the proposal launched almost exactly 2 weeks ago, right before Thanksgiving. Proposals are due, and this is probably one of the most important dates, February 20th by 3 p.m. at 2025. So make sure that if you're a manufacturer and you're submitting a proposal to our program, you get your documentation and all files submitted by then. We will be looking to announce which manufacturers have been awarded under the scope of this PON in Q1 of 2025, and that is also when we're planning to launch RFQL 5937, which will be for owners to submit their buildings to the program as potential demonstration sites for manufacturers to engage with. We expect product development to take place over the course of 2025 and 2026. It really depends on, at what stage of a product manufacturer is submitting to us. If you're designing a brand new product, this may be late. This may take a bit longer to get ready. If you have an existing product that only needs slight modifications or that meets our specs, you may be ready to demonstrate this immediately. So depending on on what stage a specific product is in, we expect field demonstrations to either begin for the start of the heating season next year, 2025, with remaining demonstrations taking place in the heating season in 2026. So next slide, please. And I will also pass this off to my colleague, Brett Weiland, who will talk a little bit about the proposal requirements.
All right, thank you, Cody. Okay, some proposal requirements. We'll start with how to submit, obviously very important. Once your proposal or proposals are available and ready, you can submit them via the online portal. A link to this can be found on the program solicitation page on NYSERDA's current funding opportunities site, as well as in this presentation on this slide here, which will be uploaded to the program page specifically in the coming days. As Cody just noted, proposals are due February 20th. But I do want to note that the online proposal process, filling out the form, can take a little bit of time, especially if you do not already have an account set up in the portal. So you are very highly encouraged to complete this process well in advance of 3 p.m. On the 20th. Cody also mentioned this, but again, we're looking specifically for proposals in response to this PON from those with heat pump manufacturing capabilities. And the RFQL to qualified building owners will open in the new year. Okay, some of the proposal requirements. The categories in the PON are the type of PTHP product you will be proposing, manufacturer qualifications, project team and timeline, market scaling, and budget and requested funding. Next slide, please. Okay, the big one is, of course, the product that you will be proposing. In this section, you will should clearly identify the detailed specs of the product that you're proposing. This should include, but not be limited to, a delineation of which category of the three that Cody outlined you're proposing into, which three or multiple of those, and whether it's a new product, a modification of existing product, or a commercially available product with no program-driven modifications, which Cody also mentioned. By the way, a full list of these product specifications can be found on the program solicitation page. It's called Attachment A, Product Specifications. Should be pretty clear. A little bit of a note that Cody touched on a bit, but commercially available products with no modifications due to this program are available, and you can access that funding by submitting a proposal with that requests product development or no product development funding, but field demonstration funding. One very important thing as you compare the proposal to the specs that we've outlined, you should clearly outline whether your proposal meets, exceeds, or falls short of those specifications. And where there are some shortfalls, be very clear and thorough in your explanation of the reasoning for those unmet requirements. We do understand that testing the performance of these units against the outlined requirements, specifically seasonal COP, may require alternate testing strategies beyond those that are kind of the market standards. And as such, part of the requirements in your proposal are to outline a comprehensive testing strategy to accurately test this performance in a lab setting. And then finally, to confirm that the specifications included in your proposal are designed to address the actual needs of the market, we're also requesting that you describe the market engagement that you engaged in that drove the specifications you are proposing. This should include the necessary facilitated activities that Cody outlined, as well as any other self-driven engagement. Next slide, please. Okay, moving on to manufacturer qualifications. Please include your company background, as well as any relevant experience developing or manufacturing PTACs or PTHPs, as well as any cold climate heat pump products. This doesn't need to be exclusive to PTAC products. So any cold climate heat pumps that you've developed or manufactured, we want to hear about those. And we're also interested in kind of your overarching manufacturing capacity and financial resources to scale. We want to do that to understand your ability to ramp up production to meet the potential large market demand for these new packaged thermal heat pump products. For the project team and timeline, please identify the primary point of contact, as well as any other key personnel who will be involved in the program, as well as a very thorough project timeline, inclusive of all key milestones. A note for the team, we want to see resumes for all those members, so please include those as well. Our goal, obviously, for the products that result from this program are that they will be widely applicable to the New York State market as well as beyond. So another element of the proposal that we request is that you include an analysis of the predicted addressable market for the specific product that you're proposing or products, as well as your strategy to scale adoption into this identified market. Next slide, please. All right, wrapping up the proposal requirements with some budget details. Some elements to include in the budgets that you provide with your proposal are cost breakdowns for each of the product development stages, as well as an estimate of your planned private investment beyond the funding that you're requesting from NYSERDA. We also would like to see the forecasted costs for the resulting units themselves, both the field demonstration prototypes, if that's still at a prototype stage, as well as final production packaged thermal heat pumps that you're proposing. And then this budget section is also where you will outline how much funding that you're requesting for both product development and field demonstration. As the caps for these two overarching activities are individual and separate, please outline separate funding requests for product development with a cap of $250,000 and field demonstration with a cap of $1 million. A note on the demonstrations, we are looking for demonstrations of significant scale and building diversity to thoroughly validate the real world performance of these products. So keep that in mind when you're estimating the field demonstration cost. And Cody mentioned already that up to 100% NYSERDA cost share is available for the field demonstration cost. But I wanted to highlight a little bit more that this is inclusive of the make-ready work that may need to be done to the eventual demonstration sites. The RFQL that we will issue in the new year, RFQL 5937, will not have funding attached to it. And as such, all make-ready support will come from funds awarded to manufacturers through this PON. The amount and structure of that support will be determined between the demonstration teams, the manufacturer and building owners who create teams, but that support should be considered when you're determining how much field demonstration funding to request. And then lastly, a small note is please do not include estimates for maintenance and verification in your budget or funding requests. NYSERDA will be working with third-party contractors to perform that work, so that will not be needed to be included in the funding that's being awarded. Okay, next slide. All right, I'm going to hand it back over to Cody to talk a little bit more about the evaluation criteria.
Thank you, Brett. And yeah, so we'll just give a quick overview of the evaluation criteria before we move on. There's a few things that we want to specifically call out in terms of how NYSERDA is going to be looking at proposals and what we're really interested in seeing in response to some of these criteria. So there are 5 main criteria that we will be evaluating proposals on, as Brett kind of just went through, very closely matches the proposal required sections. But we're going to be looking at the proposed PTHP itself, how well does it meet the NYSERDA specs, what is the actual performance of the unit, how much is this unit going to cost to develop. We are going to be looking at manufacturer qualifications. We'll be looking at the project team and estimated timeline, the ability for this product to scale. Is this a product that's only applicable to one building from one owner, or is this a product that's applicable to multiple buildings or multiple building types? And then, of course, we'll be evaluating the budget. So if you go to the next slide, please. The kind of 3 things we really kind of just want to call out are not necessarily that these are, the most important things, but there are 3 things that we really think should be emphasized when it comes to the evaluation criteria. One is, of course, this PON is all about the unit itself. While you are requesting up to $1 million per product for field demonstrations, we really want to make sure that the units that are developed under the scope of this program meet owners' needs and hit all the minimum criteria that is required to actually make this a cost-effective solution for buildings in New York. So we are going to be looking very closely at how well proposed units meet the NYSERDA specs. One thing to note is, while of course units that meet every single bullet point we have listed in our spec, will naturally be scored higher than units which don't meet every single bullet point. You manufacturers do have abilities to, if you think there's one specific requirement that can be met in a different way, or you have alternative proposal for how to meet this requirement, include that in your proposal. Talk to us about how you're thinking about the features for these units, and there may be an ability to really design a unit that fits well for different owner needs. The second thing we're really going to be looking at, of course, is just how well qualified is the manufacturer and the project team. This is pretty straightforward, but we want to see that you have experience developing heat pump and package terminal heat pump products. We want to see that you have experience selling package terminal heat pump products in the market, and that you have the right level of organizational support to make sure that this initiative is successful overall. Finally, when it comes to the budget side, one of the big things we really want to call out is, of course, there is as noted, there's $250K available per product for product development itself. So we'll be looking at, how do you plan to spend this $250K? If you're developing a new unit, then we would expect it to be closer to the 150K mark. If it's an existing unit that doesn't need any modifications, we would be expecting essentially no product demonstration costs to be made. But this is something that you should be justifying to us in your proposal. How much money are you asking for product development, and why do you need this much money based on where your product is in its lifetime? On the field demonstration side, so we understand that the RFQL has not happened yet, so there are no qualified demonstration sites at this time. We want to clarify that field demonstrations do not have to be real projects in the sense that you do not need to come to us with a specific building, a specific owner that's already signed on at this point in the pond. We are looking for estimates for at what price point manufacturers believe they can deliver field demonstrations. So for up to this $1 million, you should be telling us how much of that money you want, how many units you believe you can deliver, and then what portion of that money you think the owner may need in terms of make-ready work for the building. So just to clarify, these will be best guess estimates, which you should try to give us some justification on for how you calculated them, but they do not need to be based on real projects that are going to be moving forward at this time. So next slide, please. So just to cover the slide one more time, I already talked about this in a little bit detail, but just want to kind of reemphasize the major points here. Again, proposals are due February 20th. We will be announcing the manufacturers in Q1 of next year, and the RFQL will also be launching an RFQL of next year. So these are the 3 next milestones that everyone on this call should kind of have on their radar. Next slide, please. And one more time to reiterate the key points. Proposals are due February 20th, 2025 by 3 p.m. Eastern time. So make sure you hit that deadline because we have no flexibility on that. Make sure you read the solicitation. We've said a lot on the call today, and we have a number of questions that we'll be getting to, but it is very, very important to read the full technical specs that we posted as part of this PON, as well as the evaluation criteria. This is really where you're going to get the insight you need to give us a good proposal that's likely to be funded. And then finally, address all evaluation criteria. It seems a little obvious, but you'd be surprised how many proposals we've gotten for other initiatives in the past where key sections are left out. So just make sure that out of the 5 sections that Brett walked through, you have all of them in your proposal, and you are giving us the information we need so that we can actually complete scoring and evaluate your proposal properly. So next slide, please. So we find ourselves at the end of our presentation. So we will kick off the Q&A section right now. I know we have a number of questions that have been submitted in the chat so far. So I think I would say if you've been holding your questions, please submit them in the Q&A right now, and otherwise we'll just start reading through and answering some of these questions. So to run through, and I see that Sophie has been answering some of these in the chat already for some of you folks, but I will just read out the question and the answer really quickly so that everyone can hear it. So just as a question, what are the dimensions of the existing wall openings? These are listed in the PON. We have all of the dimensions that are eligible under these categories, specifically listed out in the PON document. So make sure you check that and you can find the dimensions. Second question, is Q1, Q2 the earliest opportunity for building owners to be involved in applying to be a demonstration site? And so when it comes to actually submitting an application for a specific building as a qualified demonstration site, yes, Q1, Q2 of next year is going to be when we're looking for you to actually submit something to us. That being said, we would love to have you involved in specifically the program launch workshops in January and February, where your insight will really help manufacturers create better proposals. And again, with site visits. If you are an owner and you're willing to let a potential manufacturer respond to the spawn, walk around one of your buildings to look at some of the existing openings, look at some of the existing conditions, and really try to figure out their proposal, we are happy for that to happen as well. So yes, Q1, Q2 is when you're submitting proposals, but please stay in the loop for right now. Moving on to the next question. Can we give more detail on phase 3 of the program? So I will say this is a bit further out, so you're not allowed to hold us to anything we say right now. But our model for what we're thinking about for phase 3 could be thought of as similarly to the federal EV incentive. where we were considering giving manufacturers that have products which meet our spec a pool of money, and then as they sell those units, we'll be providing essentially midstream or upstream incentives to make those units cheaper to the end user. So that's our plan right now. Again, we are still a little bit further out. The RFQL launch is our next major milestone, but we are planning to essentially provide funding for a mass adoption or a large-scale adoption of the units that have been developed under phase 1 and phase 2 of this program. Moving on, I would say, so our heat pump component manufacturers, such as scroll compressors with capacities ranging from 10 to 40 tons, eligible to apply. So I would say if you just manufacture components for heat pumps, then you likely will need to partner with an overall equipment integrator or the manufacturer of the overall product itself, because we are looking for proposals that meet all of the specs we have published, not all of which are strictly related to cold climate performance or the performance of the heat pump itself. So if you are a compressor manufacturer, I would strongly encourage you to partner up with a heat pump manufacturer to submit a product in order to have a good chance of winning some funding. Moving down to the next question, just a quick note, will building owners be limited to those buildings with a regulatory agreement? The answer is no. What we're looking for building owners, and there will be more specific details on site requirements when the RFQL comes out early next year. But essentially, we're just looking for buildings that have current PTAC systems or through-wall ACs that are looking for a decarbonization solution and are willing to demonstrate, some of the units that are developed through this product in their building. And not much else when it comes to site requirements beyond that, although, we'll have some specific building requirements. Moving down to the next question, is the program limited to residential units or also open to terminal heat pumps for commercial buildings? So as of right now, we're focused on multifamily because this is where we see some of the biggest need. But we certainly plan, especially in phase 3, when we're looking at early adopter incentives and scaling solutions, we will certainly be open to looking at commercial buildings because we realize there definitely is a class of building out there, primarily hospitality hotels that have a lot of PTACs that this could be a good solution for. But as of right now, we are focused on multifamily, commercial in the future. Moving down to the next question, at this time, do you have a preferred building size, either total square footage or number of apartments for demonstration project sites? This exact metric is something we're still fine-tuning and setting. We will have more information available in Q1 of next year as the RFQL is getting closer to launch. As of right now, we don't necessarily have a preferred building size, we just have a minimum building size. So we'll be looking for buildings that have, by NYSERDA's definition of multifamily units, at least 5 apartment units, but likely we're looking for a little bit larger, 30, 40 units per building on the smaller side. But of course, when it comes time to demonstration sites, we'll be taking applications for any building size, and nothing is specifically off the table as of right now. So just stay in touch, and we'll give you more, and you'll get more information on the RFQL demonstration site requirements in the coming months. Moving down to required performance standards. I will just say we have everything listed in the attachment A of the PON. We have a fairly detailed list of what our technical requirements are for performance when it comes to required SEER ratings and HSPF ratings. I'm not going to reiterate them on the call right now. Go read the PON, they're listed in there. Moving down to the next question, is this only for New York City? As Sophie noted, this is certainly a statewide opportunity. So a lot of these buildings are in New York City, but there are also a lot of buildings outside of New York City, and we certainly don't have any preference or specific requirement for New York City versus upstate. So please submit to us products that are applicable for sites throughout New York State, which is important to keep in mind that New York State is 3 climate zones, and also make sure that the products that you're developing could be applicable to New York City as well. What we would say is out of the 3 categories that we are offering support for, category 2, the hydronic PTAC, this is likely going to be kind of a New York City only category, whereas category 1 and category 3 will be more broadly applicable throughout the state. So moving down, Can an Israeli HVAC manufacturer apply for funding? Yes. We have some standard contractor requirements, but for the most part, we are looking for manufacturers of heat pump technology. So whether you are US-based or whether you are international, you are eligible to apply, but there will be some additional specific requirements if you are international. As Sophie noted, you will need a US tax identification number. Moving down, is there a minimum required investment even in either dollar or resources from manufacturers? So we are not stipulating a minimum required investment for manufacturers. This is something that we want you to talk about in your proposal to us, basically, when you're asking us for the $250K for product development and you're asking us for the $1 million for demonstration sites. Tell us why you need this money, what it's going to be spent for, and if the manufacturer or the owner are not providing any cost share, it may make sense for that project, but you have to justify that to us. We typically will be looking for some cost share from either the manufacturer or the owner, but if you have a really good reason for why NYSERDA should fund all of it, make that argument to us in your proposal, and that's something that will be considered by the scoring committee. Moving down, can a nonprofit support a manufacturer in M&V and managing the project? So I would say yes. Something that is still kind of to be determined. As Brett noted, NYSERDA will be kind of handling the M&V for this project, so we will be directly contracting with an M&V firm and providing that, at no charge to folks who are participating in this program in the demonstration sites. In terms of that specific contract, I would say if you're interested in participating in the M&V process, then stay tuned because we will be doing a solicitation for an M&V contractor early in the new year. Moving to the next question. With respect to product development funding, does this funding entitle NYSERDA to an ownership share in the product, or would we intend to charge royalties on sales after products are developed or completed? No, NYSERDA is waiving all recoupment or royalty requirements for products that are developed under this program. So any products that are developed and awarded funding under this program fully belong to the manufacturer. You will never need to pay us a royalty on it. Good news. Moving on to the next question. Would proposal scoring incorporate manufacturer plant proximity to New York State? Not as a direct score, so you won't necessarily get more points because you are manufacturing in New York State versus manufacturing somewhere in the US or manufacturing somewhere abroad. But it may, so there's no negatives associated with it, but I would say, in general, there are some attractive options to if there was manufacturing in New York State. So I would just say, no, we don't have any specific points assigned to it, but we always do like to see New York State manufacturing. So if it makes sense, come work in New York State. Moving to the next question, are there any requirements around controls? Many of these buildings have fossil heat, so controls for dual fuel hybrid heat would seem important. Yes, again, we would say go look at the attachment to the PON, which contains the full technical specs for the heat pump product. We do have a section on controls features and functionality that we are looking for these units to include. We have some, of course, some of the basic ones, but we are definitely open to creative solutions for manufacturers. If you have a really interesting way of controlling the units in a building to reduce load or reduce standard electrical infrastructure upgrades in a building, these are things we would like to see in the proposal. So moving down, how many awardees will there be and how much total funding available for just manufacturers? So total under the PON that has been released today, since the only folks who can apply to this PON are manufacturers, specifically for product development and field demonstration, the full award is available for these two categories. So we have $10 million available total. In some theoretical world, since there are no limits on individual manufacturers submitting products, if one manufacturer submits 10 projects, theoretically, and they're the best, they win the scoring committee for all 10 products, then theoretically we may issue one award for the full 10 million to one manufacturer, although that's probably very unlikely. But really, we will be making this available. We don't have any specific requirements on max award per contractor. It's really just submit to us proposals for your products, and the best products will win and get funded up to that $10 million. Moving on to the next question. Is it clear that meeting specification? It is clear that meeting specifications are very important to NYSERDA. However, there also seems to be a strong focus on heating. Is there room for an appliance that provides only heating and air circulation? Rather than cooling, I believe is the question. So I would say under the scope of this PON, we are looking for packaged terminal heat pump units that provide both cooling and heating. If you have a heating-only solution that also includes air circulation, I would say maybe send us a note separately, and we'll add it to our list of interesting things to keep in mind as we're thinking about new programs. But for right now, for this program, we are looking for units that deliver both cooling and heating. Next, just to clarify, yes, NYSERDA will. Did you say that NYSERDA will be using their own M&D contractors and not to include in that a proposal? As Sophie said, correct. NYSERDA will be handling the M&D for these projects, so you do not need to cost that into the proposals. For clarification, for the phase 3 of the program, did you say similar to the federal EV model? Yes, that is what we said. That's the model of making a pot of money available to manufacturers, and then as units are sold, basically this pot of money is drew down from. Next question, in terms of scalability, are only very large buildings potentially eligible for upgrades? I own a 60-bed assisted living community in upstate New York with all P-tax. Is it worth applying? Certainly. This is, I would say, not for this PON, but when we launch the RFQL in early next year, Q1, Q2, you should certainly submit your building as a potential demonstration site to be added to this list of sites. Like we said, this is applicable to folks that are upstate New York as well as New York City, and we are willing to consider commercial properties under the course of this, under the course of the RFQL. So please submit that when we launch the RFQL early in the new year. Moving down, for demonstration sites, are you looking for buildings that have a minimum unit amount? Would garden-style apartment buildings qualify? The answer, as Michael said, is yes, we are interested in garden-style apartments. In a nutshell, the only true minimum we have is that we are looking at buildings that meet the definition of multifamily, which means at least 5 units. So as long as you have at least 5 units in your building, then it can potentially be considered for the scope of a qualified demonstration site. Moving down, is the funding only open to manufacturers within New York, or can heat pump manufacturers outside New York but within the U.S. apply? This is open to heat pump manufacturers anywhere, whether it is New York-based, whether it's U.S.-based, whether it's international. Any heat pump manufacturer or any manufacturer of heat pump products is eligible to apply to this proposal. As Sophie noted, there will be some additional requirements if you are international-based, but at least in terms of eligibility, we will take proposals from any manufacturer. Moving down, can you clarify the requirements of the controller system, particularly for the whole building? Does the BMS system meet your requirements? And regarding grid integration, is 24-volt communication connection sufficient, or are there other requirements? I will answer the first part of this. The second part we will respond to in writing following the call. But for right now, just in terms of clarifying the requirements for controls, particularly for the whole building, there are no whole building control requirements for this specific PON or for the RFQL later on. In some ways, these units are targeted at buildings that don't have are also targeted at buildings that don't have really comprehensive whole building BMSs. So we are looking for control functionality to be part of each individual unit itself, but we have no requirement that they all need to be networked into a common BAS that's already in place in the building, or that a new BAS or BMS needs to be installed. So check out the specific product control requirements within the PON, but otherwise there are no larger demonstration site control requirements outside of what's included in the NYSERDA spec. And then moving down to the last question that we have posted for right now, do geothermal heat pumps qualify as PTHP units for this funding, in particular geothermal network systems? The answer is kind of no. We really are looking for truly, packaged units that will fit into existing building infrastructure. That's one of the key things that we're really trying to focus on through the course of this PON, which is, as we noted, we're looking for units that meet our specs for cold climate performance and efficiency, but we are really, really interested in units that are compatible with existing building infrastructure, which means existing sleeves, existing electrical infrastructure, and all of this kind of needs to be packaged and available to do kind of one-for-one replacements with existing PTACs of those three categories. So as of right now, we're not really looking at geothermal heat pumps, but maybe in the future. So I will pause. It looks like that's all the questions that have been submitted for right now. If anyone has any additional questions, please submit them in the Q&A. Especially if we didn't properly answer one of your questions, please go ahead and submit it in the Q&A and we'll make sure to cover it. But otherwise, we'll just pause for a minute and give folks an opportunity we'll see if anything else comes in.
I do want to make a quick note that we have received some questions via email from the program email leading up to this call. Some of them are of a nature that we will answer directly via email as a response, but also take those questions and answers and add them to the Q&A summary so that they're available for anyone who's interested. But there's a few that we could address now. The first one was, is the funding for the demonstration project stackable with other NYSERDA or utility programs? Do you want to take that?
Great question. The answer is yes, but not for the exact same thing. So in this case, since we would be providing our funding primarily for the PTHP, the installation and the maintenance of the PTHP as part of the demonstration sites, it would not be appropriate for you to go to Con Ed or the local utility and try to receive incentives on the PTHP unit itself, because that's something that NYSERDA is already directly incentivizing. However, if there's other project scope that's happening in a building that is eligible for incentives from other programs, whether it's an NYSERDA program, whether it's a utility program, they're doing installation that's eligible under a different program, or they're also replacing the boiler, which is eligible under a different program. You certainly can get incentives for slightly unrelated scopes of work, but anything that's directly related to the PTHP itself and the demonstration of these PTHP units, we'll be looking to essentially for NYSERDA to provide the funding for.
Great, thank you. Another one is Q3 2025 the earliest NYSERDA would be interested in beginning field testing? I can go ahead and take this one. Not necessarily. That's somewhat of an estimation of the product development timeline for these products, but if you are a manufacturer who is already well down the development process and are available to begin demonstration earlier, that's not an absolute no. However, of course, we need to qualify the potential demonstration sites, demonstration teams need to be developed, and all the planning needs to take place. So how much further that can move forward is up for consideration, but we're not limiting it to only starting in Q3. But that would be the earliest heating season, so it may be the most logical place to start testing. Let's see. Looking for ones that are more broadly applicable to the group.
And I do see one more question did come into the chat, so I'll just run through that quickly. So can a building owner be a consortium of buildings with similar design characteristics that can benefit from the PTHP and pool an application? I would say yes. The way the RFQL is going to work is essentially we're going to be looking to qualify individual buildings and then add them to a list of eligible demonstration sites that manufacturers can then use the demonstration, can work with owners to use the demonstration funding from. So we haven't exactly set what the specific applications on RFQ will be, but certainly owners can submit a pool of buildings in an application. So it's not just that you have to choose one of your buildings and that's the only one you can submit. If there's a set of buildings that all, especially that all share design characteristics, whether it's within one owner portfolio group or a consortium of owners, we'd be happy to see a set of applications for the full set of buildings.
From these questions, it's not a specific question, but there's kind of a category that's kind of emerging of asking about different specs or criteria as it relates to scoring one product against another. And to that, I think we would say is that we are looking to create as diverse and kind of well-rounded of a product catalog coming out of this. And we're not directly scoring them against each other per se. We want to award product proposals that will provide valuable solutions for the market in general. There is a limited amount of funding, but the proposals that we'll receive are not directly scored against each other. Cody, do you want to expound on that a little bit?
Yeah, I think, right. So just to kind of build off a little bit about Brett was saying, one, read the PON again. We have all the evaluation criteria listed out in the PON with more detail than we've talked about today. And that's really going to be the most important thing for you to look at, because that's what the scores will be directly based on, what's in the PON right now. That being said, out of the requirements that we have listed, we would really kind of point to maybe 3 categories that NYSERDA is really, really interested in, which will have a little bit more weight than some of the others. One, like we said, this is the product development PON at its core. So it's all about the unit at the very core of this. So you have to meet our performance specs. And if you don't meet our performance specs, you have to have a very good reason for not meeting our performance specs. But really, you got to meet the performance specs. You have to have a good unit. Second, as we've said it a couple of times, but being compatible with existing building infrastructure, not requiring electrical infrastructure upgrades. This is really, really important as part of the PON as well. So what does that mean? It means that for units that may be in category 1, a lot of these units may have dedicated circuits for the PTAX or be at 240 volts. So that's a design constraint that you can think about if you're applying to category 1. Versus category 3 or the through-wall AC. I have through-wall ACs in my apartment, and I can tell you we do not have dedicated circuits for our through-wall ACs. And almost across the board, they're going to be at 120 volts. So if you are proposing a category 3 and you propose a 240 volt unit, it's going to be very, very hard to justify, how your unit's going to be scalable in the market. So these are big things to keep in mind. Is your unit going to be compatible with the broadest range of existing buildings and existing building infrastructure as possible? Do you meet the specs that we have published? And then finally, kind of one of the last big things we'll be thinking about is, and this really does kind of fit into the spec, is just scalability of solution, right? When it comes to condensate management, when it comes to applicability of unit in buildings, how well can your unit scale is something that the scoring committee will also be paying attention to. So beyond that, I would just say read the PON, but these are kind of some of the most important things that we're thinking about.
Yeah, and then one other thing, actually.
And then I do.
Sorry, go ahead, Cody.
Oh, no, I was going to move on to the next question. Go ahead, Brett.
Yeah, just a clarification on, or kind of it wasn't a question in the chat, but I wanted to note based on that. The evaluation criteria and the required specs will not be scored on a pass-fail basis. So as you are determining the specs that you want to include in your proposal, if you don't 100% meet all of them, you should still propose. As Cody mentioned, they will be scored to the level that they meet those, but it's not a pass-fail basis. So put your best product forward, basically.
Yep. And we have one last question this will answer, and then pretty much we're out of time. So just to quickly run through this, and I think this helps actually answer the question we just talked about. The question is, a 35 decibel level mandatory for development? Is it too low? And questions about capacity ranges. So this is exactly what Brett was just saying. This is certainly our target. If you think that for whatever reason, it's like, oh, 35 is too low, we can deliver 40. If we were going to go to 35, it would double the price of the unit, right? These are the types of considerations that we want to see in the proposal. If for whatever reason you are not meeting or can't meet a specific spec, give us the justification for why, and it may be something we can still consider. But other than that, I think if there are any additional questions that we didn't get to today, as noted, they'll be added to the Q&A doc, which will be sent out following this webinar, likely by the end of this week. But otherwise, we are exactly at noon right now, so I would like to basically thank everyone for their time today on this call. And reminder, if you're a manufacturer, submit your proposal by February 20th.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.